Welcome back to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter and I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am coming to you from the end of the week and then we're going to go back and take a look at the beginning of the week in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things first. One is that I had a bit of a shortened week because we had guests in town, but I managed to get one very important project done. I also want to talk to you about another project that is very high on my list because it's something that I use all the time, all throughout the year. And I thought I was going to fail on that one, but I think things are really looking up. I'm very excited about it. So let's go ahead and jump into earlier this week. One of the things at the top of my list this year to get done is pasta sauce. I was completely out on my shelf and I almost let that kind of blow past me, but fortunately I figured it out before I was out of tomato season. I need at least 12 jars. A few extra would be great because sometimes we have things like lasagna, but figure we would have spaghetti once a month, which is about how it shakes out for us. And 1 pint jar of sauce is perfect because I tend to mix that with 1 pint jar of crumbled Italian sausage or 1 pint jar of crumbled ground beef. And that's how we do our spaghetti. So I was aiming for at least 12 jars, more if possible. Well, I came across this recipe. I've seen a couple of folks do this, the All New Ball Book of Canning. It is oven roasted marinara. It's on page 204 in this book, if you have it. So I thought, well, this year I'm going to do a specific recipe. Usually I just kind of, do the tomato sauce and then I add seasonings and then I put the lemon juice in the jar. And that always seems to work well for us, but I thought I'd branch out this year. So oven roasted marinara it is. So one batch of this recipe makes 8 pints and uses 20 pounds of plum tomatoes. I didn't have 20 pounds worth of plum tomatoes, but I had plenty of just tomatoes. So I used 30 pounds of tomatoes, going for a recipe and a half, at least 12 jars, as I mentioned. I had probably 10 or 12 pounds of tomatoes in the freezer. So I left those out to defrost. It's so easy to pull off the skins when you do that, but I didn't have all of them in the freezer. And honestly, I probably would have put them in the freezer a couple of days beforehand had I had any room in my freezer, but I don't have any room in my freezer. So next best thing to me is to just throw everything in the roaster, go ahead and pull the skins off the frozen ones as they defrost a little bit, and you can just run those under some hot water and they come off just crazy easily. So I threw those in. And I also had a bunch of fresh tomatoes that I threw in, and I could have stuck them under the broiler and pulled off the skins that way. I could have run this through, a big serious strainer. I could have done it several different ways to get those skins out, and I'm not super picky about getting all the skins out. But I did want to get most of them out because I do like a rather smooth spaghetti sauce. So I threw in the fresh tomatoes. I cut those in half, cored them, threw those in, and they went overnight in the roaster pan so that by the next morning I was easily able to pull those skins off the fresh tomatoes. And then from there I took out a ton of liquid. I mean, just a ton of liquid. And this is what happens when you don't use plum tomatoes in a canning recipe. You end up with a ton of tomato liquid. So I'm pulling that out. I'm not throwing it away. I have some tentative plans for that. I've been saving it up kind of all summer long, and I even have some left from last year. It's just in the freezer. I haven't canned it or anything. And I think I'm going to do something with that this year. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't let it go down the drain and I didn't just, sit there and cook it off for 4 days or whatever it would have taken, because I ended up with, I think, 10 cups of just tomato liquid out of this batch. So once I got the liquid out and the skins out, I went ahead and took the immersion blender to it. I like a really smooth sauce, so you'll see as we go along, the immersion blender doesn't do all the work. After that, I end up putting it through my food mill, and I use the medium setting on my food mill because I do want some tomato pulp, but I do want to catch most of the seeds. I want to come out with a relatively smooth product, but I don't mind being able to see that it was made with actual real tomatoes. So if that makes any sense, it's kind of a delicate balance I walk. And I think, quite frankly, what it really does is give me a little leeway either way. If I go too far or if I don't go quite far enough, I seem to have met my crazy non-specific criteria. So I put everything through the food mill, which is you know, it's a nice little arm workout. It doesn't take long. I have one of those big ones that attaches to the countertop and all of that. But again, I'm just a mess maker in the kitchen, and this is significantly less messy for me to keep it contained. I can do it right in the pot that I'm going to use with this recipe. So the other couple of things about this recipe, it involves onions. I normally use some onions in mine, but this had a decent amount of onions. It had 1.5 cups of onions for a single batch recipe, so I used 2¼ cups of diced onions. So I wanted to sweat those down, caramelize just a little bit, and then I had to work in the red wine. And it used, let me see how much, it used 1.5 cups of dry red wine, 1.5 cups for my 1.5 times batch that I'm doing. So it was important to me to do the onions and wine and garlic and all of that separately. The wine needed to cook down for quite some time, and the timing just didn't work out with when I was straining the tomatoes. But with the onions and the garlic, I didn't want to throw those in the roaster and then end up losing those when I put the mixture through the food mill. So I wanted to get those tomatoes through first, get them smooth, and then I'm going to just move everything over to the stove. So now I've brought you up to speed on all the grunt work of making this pasta sauce. Let's get on to getting it done. All right, it is 8 minutes after 5 o'clock, and I finally have a quiet house all to myself, so I could turn the microphone on. So I want to take a look at the sauce. I've got about 2 hours to myself here, so I may end up adding some tomato paste, because let me show you, it is not, I don't know, for pasta sauce, I don't like it to be too thick, but I also don't want it to just, you know, run straight through the noodles and pool down in the bottom of the bowl. So I'm going to have to thicken that up a bit, and I think I may help it along with the tomato paste so that I can get it done while I have the chance. But I thought, now I have not added the lemon juice yet, and I need to run downstairs and I need to run downstairs and grab a bottle of lemon juice. But I did want to go ahead and see what the pH of this is. I also need to add some more seasoning and stuff, but let's take a look at this first. So with the tomatoes that I used this year and that wine, it's at about 3, I'd call that 3.5. Let me see if I can get a little closer so you could actually see that. So you be the judge of whether or not you're comfortable using the lemon juice or citric acid or not, based on your own batch, not based on my batch, because, you know, the tomatoes that came out of my garden, I don't really know exactly, beyond just strict genetics, if there's anything else that adds to the acidity level of those. But I am going to add the lemon juice because, as I said, I do enjoy it. But I need to taste this for seasoning. I just don't think we're there yet. We're definitely not there yet. All right, I'm going to add some salt, some pepper, probably a little bit of allulose, and some more basil. So I added before the quantity of salt and pepper for one batch, and I actually have 1.5 batches in here. So that takes me up to the 1.5 batch quantity for salt. Let's add a little more pepper. I may add just a, ow, shoot, the stove is hot. I may add just a smidge more, or a smidge of garlic powder as well. Okay, this is basil from the garden, freeze-dried. Let's add that garlic powder. I think that's going to be a really good idea. See, get that broken up before it congeals there. finally get my quiet house, and the dog is standing right behind you, which is where the pantry is. And she knows beyond any shadow of a doubt that that's where her treats live also. And she is standing there growling at me under her breath, waiting for me to fetch her a treat. All right, we'll give that just a minute while I give the dog a treat, and then we'll come back and taste it again and see if I have enough seasoning in there. We are not there yet in terms of flavor, so I'm just going to doctor this up a bit. Start with some allulose. Make sure I'm going to get this well balanced. That was maybe a quarter of a cup. And, oh, I need a knife or something. I'm going to add some tomato paste. I think I probably need more salt still as well. That was, I don't know, half a jar. This is 7 ounces. Now I'd call it half a jar. And I will, like I said, I normally add my lemon juice to the jar. But I think because this is not my usual recipe, I'll go ahead and add it to the batch so that I can taste it all together while I'm working on the seasoning. Okay, half a cup of lemon juice for one recipe, one batch. So I'm going to do 3/4 of a cup of lemon juice. And again, you can use citric acid, or you can, depending on your pH, or if you want to pressure can it, you can make your own adjustments that you feel good about. But I do love lemon juice. It just brightens everything up to me. All right. Now the dog wants water. Can't win for losing around here. Do we need some water? All right, here you go, Missy. Ah, now she has to wait for the cat to get out of the way so she can get to the water she just requested. All right, I'm going to give that a few minutes for the tomato paste to kick in. And I think it's going to take, well, it's clearly going to take my big water bath canner, which is right above your right shoulder. So I'm going to, your left shoulder. I don't know, it's over there, whatever shoulder that is for you. So I'm going to get that out, get it filled up, because it's going to take a long time for that to heat up enough to heat up my jars. And then we'll come back and see where this is. We are finally ready to go. I have all of my jars heated in the big canner. This holds 15 pints. So we'll see. This holds 15 quarts. And I'm kind of like halfway there. So I'm going for 15. Won't be 16 because I'm certainly not going to can another round. It goes for 40 minutes. And we're going to do a 1/2 inch headspace. The flavor is now really good. I will say though, I'm not sure the wine added the depth I really wanted it to. But that's okay. It's still good. Now I'm going to have some separation in this because it's still not quite as thick, but I think that'll be all right. I always add either ground beef or sausage to it when I'm turning it into spaghetti. And then of course if I'm using it in some kind of, baked ziti or lasagna or something like that. Having a little more liquid in it is good. I'm going to get my headspace under control and get these rims wiped really carefully. Okay. It's probably a generous ½ inch on all of them, but I'm okay with that with tomato products because, they can flare up on you. This is probably a lot more pasta sauce than we're going to need this year, but that's okay. I don't want to run out again. This is going to process for 40 minutes, and then I will turn off the burner, take the lid off, and let them sit for another 5 minutes. And that extra 5 minutes I think is really important, particularly with something like tomato products, which can siphon. I want them to come down from the heat slowly. And then again, with tomato products especially, it's important to put them on some sort of a towel so they don't go straight on the cold granite countertop. All right, I'm going to get these in. Turned out to be a beautiful jar. All right, I think I have, 3 more jars. More than 3 more jars worth of pasta sauce. But that's okay, we'll have it this week. I have about 1 pint's worth left in there, but that's okay. Maybe that'll be spaghetti tomorrow night. All right, that's a full canner. I'm going to put the lid on. Wait till I hit a full rolling boil with smoke pouring out from underneath the lid. And then I'm going to set my timer for 40 minutes. And I'm going to put the rest of this away. Let me show you what I have left. It's not that much, but it is enough for dinner for the 2 of us tomorrow night, I think. That's more than a pint, isn't it? And maybe a pint and a half. All right, so that'll be our dinner tomorrow night. And we'll come back when this is done. All right, let's talk about this beautiful batch of peppers because this brings me so much joy, I can't even tell you. As you know, I use a lot of the frozen peppers and onions, so whether they're diced up and I just throw them in an omelet or whatever, or they're cut into strips and I throw them into fajitas. Fajitas, everybody has, I would imagine, some kind of what I call a fast fallback option, FFBO. That is, for us, in our house, it is fajitas because I can open a jar of meat, I can shred some cheese, I can pull out a package of frozen peppers and onions, and I always have tortillas either in the freezer or in the fridge. And dinner is done, and it's one of my husband's favorites. It's one of my favorites. It's super easy. It's healthy. It has tons of veggies in it. I use salsa. I use all kinds of things for that, and that pleases me. So in order for it to be my FFBO, fast fallback option, I need to make sure I have plenty of peppers and onions in the freezer waiting for me. So I was concerned earlier this year because my peppers, I didn't feel like they were really up to speed and going to be as productive as I wanted them to be. I have since, I think, figured out what happened. I was originally blaming it on the strange spring weather that we had, all the rain and the cooler temperatures. And I thought, well, it's just going to be a bad pepper year, and this is going to be terrible because I always try to buy organic peppers because they're one of the dirty dozen. Dirty dozen? I think it's Dirty Dozen and Clean 13. So they're one of the dirty dozen. Every single year they get sprayed with all kinds of pesticides. So if I was going to have to meet my pepper needs at the grocery store, it was going to be a very expensive proposition this year. So it's always very important to me to take care of as many of the peppers as I possibly can. So I'm trying to figure out what is causing my peppers to be so late. Well, I did finally figure it out. Normally what I do is I grow a ton of hot peppers because my husband loves, the hot sauces and the ferments, and he likes hot peppers and everything. He likes stuffed hot peppers. He likes all of that. Well, I'm not in bad shape still. I still have hot pepper rings. I still have, I have a lot of freeze-dried, diced hot peppers. I still have some hot sauces. I grew enough hot peppers to be able to do some ferments, to be able to do some stuffed jalapenos, to be able to eat fresh. But I just don't have the need for the hot peppers like I normally do. So this year I was really focused on sweet peppers so I can meet my cooking needs. And in my experience, these larger peppers, they just take a lot longer to grow and produce than the little hot peppers. I can be churning out, and I was churning out jalapenos back in mid-June, and that's relatively normal. Banana peppers didn't take very long, they never do, but sweet peppers, and particularly the larger sweet peppers, tend to have a much longer days to maturity, and it just didn't dawn on me that I had done mostly sweet peppers, therefore my pepper harvest was going to be delayed compared to what I'm used to. So anyway, fortunately, I have now figured it out, and I'm no longer in a panic about that. So as I was harvesting these yesterday, I was taking off the organza bags, which I use to keep the, chipmunks or birds or whatever it is that's been eating my peppers away, and keep any little bugs, from boring little holes in there, or worms or whatever. So the organza bags have worked really well for that this year. So I was taking those off and moving them over to a pepper that is not yet ripe, okay? So anything that's still green on the plant, I was moving them over, and I ran out very quickly of organza bags, and I'm like, well, what on earth? So fortunately, I had some more, went in and got those. Do you know how many organza bags I have now put out there on unripe peppers? This is 19 peppers, okay? These are some pretty good sized peppers, and we'll talk about the varieties here in a second. But those are pretty good sized peppers. I have 19 in this basket. I have 90 organic organza bags on not yet ripe peppers outside. 90. I went through and counted because I thought, this is crazy. I've never used this many bags. I've had that one stash of organza bags that's lasted me, 3 or 4 years, that I hadn't even broken into that last package. 90. So I am so thrilled. Now, it is the tail end of August, beginning of September when I'm recording this. So we have, I think our first frost date this year is estimated to be October 21, October 24, somewhere there. So I figure I have 7-ish weeks until our likely first frost. Well, when you get a pepper, a sweet pepper in particular, that has reached its full maturity size, it generally takes 3 or 4 weeks for it to color up. I have 7 weeks. And the reason I may need every bit of that time is because we are headed into some cooler weather at night, and we are, of course, are heading into some shorter days. So as you head into the fall, it can take longer for these things to happen. Where in July, it may take 3 or 4 weeks for something to completely ripen. In September, you may be looking at 6, 7, 8 weeks for the same thing to happen. So I'm glad I got everything set in time. I think I'm gonna have a really good harvest, but we'll see. But fingers are crossed for that. So I wanted to do a couple of things before I cut up these beautiful peppers. The first is I want to talk to you about varieties. Now there are 3 specific varieties that I want to tell you about that I have been particularly pleased with. This one is Mamma Mia Giallo. It's a pretty thick-walled pepper. It is fast-growing. It is highly productive. It is beautiful, and it is delicious. Mamma Mia Giallo. This was my 2nd year, I think, having this in the garden. This is a keeper for sure. I overwintered one of these plants last year, and I planted another 1 or 2 in the garden. So I will overwinter probably, if I overwinter anything, I will overwinter at least 1 of the Mamma Mia Giallo, because it does give you a great head start. This is Giant Aconcagua. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'll put it on the screen. Giant Aconcagua. This is another fantastic pepper. This one starts out green, and it's actually good as green. It's not I find like a green bell pepper somewhat bitter. This one, when it's green, is not bitter. It's kind of refreshing. But I do still prefer the sweetness of when it turns red. Again, it is a great producer. I overwintered 1 last year, had another, I think 1 in the garden. Again, if I overwinter, I will definitely overwinter at least 1 of these plants. Absolutely will plant more of it next year. It is such a great pepper for slicing, dicing, chopping, whatever it is that you want to do. Now, I will tell you where I have struggled this year, and that is with orange peppers. None of my orange peppers are very big. Now, this is a particularly small one, but I really haven't gotten anything bigger than maybe that in my orange peppers. And the orange color is my favorite flavor of pepper. So if you have something great in an orange pepper, I don't care whether it's a bell or one of these elongated types or something, but something with a thick flesh, I would really love to hear about that. So one of the things I want to do with a couple of these smaller or funny shaped ones is do a test run in the freeze dryer of them as sort of big chips, or big like Super Bowl Fritos, those dip chip kind of things, right? So I was talking about that last week or the week before, and somebody talked about seasoning these before they put them in the freeze dryer. So that is absolutely on my list today. I'm going to try that. I'll do a small test batch, some red, some yellow, and make sure that we like that before I do a larger batch. But I think those might make excellent snacks for us. So I'm going to do all these small ones with that plan in mind. And everything else in this batch is going to become fajita peppers. Okay, these are done, so I'm going to take these out to the freezer so that they can do some flash freezing for me before I package them up. All right, it is several hours later. I ended up having to run out the door to make an appointment that I thought I had plenty of time to get to. Turns out I did not. I was running late. So I just threw the peppers that I'm going to turn into pepper chips into the fridge, came home, ate dinner, was kind of going about my evening and thought, oh, whoops, okay, didn't finish the peppers, didn't finish the video, so we're going to get that done right now. Let me show you what I'm going to use. This, do you remember, was it last week or the week before, I did a freezer salsa, and I froze them in, kind of what I was calling pucks and muffin tins, really. And I said, well, I'm going to freeze dry some of those. And I did that. And this is how they turned out. I will say that I had them in a batch with a whole bunch of basil, and so the time required to freeze dry each of the trays was not the same. And so these I ended up having to break up and run them a lot longer than the basil needed to be run. Now, I have these though, and I crushed some up, and I have been using it. I've used it on tortillas, I've used it on a grilled cheese sandwich, I've used it in fajitas. Now I'm going to use some on these chips. So this is how I'm crushing it up. I could put it in a blender. Well, I probably wouldn't use a blender because that would turn it to powder. I could put it in the food processor, but then I'd have something else to clean. So I don't want to clean anything else at 9 o'clock. And then I also have some ranch dressing mix. This is just a homemade version that I made up. It's not, the Hidden Valley Ranch or anything. There's no dairy in mine, although there could be freeze-dried dairy in it, and that would be absolutely fine. But I'm going to do some of the chips with that and some of the chips with this and see what we like. Okay, so I'm just going to crush these. That's about as fancy as this one gets. Okay, there is my powder. This is probably not the right bottle for this because the little holes up there are kind of small for the chunks in here. So I will need to find a different bottle. You get them every now and then. Buy one of the larger spice bottles, maybe at Aldi or something, and they have bigger holes, bigger bottle. I don't know. I think if this becomes as popular with us as I think it's going to be, I'm going to have to find something like that. So let's get this into the jar. I have never seasoned any vegetables. Have I seasoned anything? I don't think I've seasoned on top of anything going into the freeze dryer yet. So I am assuming because it's going to be freeze dried that I should not spritz this with oil, but I feel like I want to do that, but I'm not. So we'll see. Okay. Just like that. We have some freezer salsa powder. How about that? Salsa powder. Okay. Let's get these on here. I am not going to start the freeze dryer tonight. I'm going to start that in the morning. I'm going to go ahead and just put these in the freeze dryer. In the freezer to freeze overnight. I'll do one row with the salsa seasoning and one row with the ranch seasoning. Okay. All right, now what I'm thinking is I'm not going to put the little filter thing back on here. Maybe I should. Oh my gosh. I'll be here till Wednesday if I do it that way. Let's take this out. And I think maybe what I'll do is just put some in my hand. Also don't know how much to put on here. I know that the flavor intensifies peppers when they're freeze-dried, which is wonderful. This has already been freeze-dried, so the flavor is definitely intensified and it's fantastic. And I don't know what that means in terms of how much I ought to be using. Okay. If there's a better way to do that, let me know. Now let's do a little ranch dressing. My onion powder in here is a little clumpy. I'll get a spoon for this. Yeah. These will be well seasoned on this side. Okay. All right. What do we think? Okay, I'm going to stick these in the freezer and I'm going to call it a night. I'm also going to call it a wrap on this video. I'll fill you in on these next week. So I hope you had a great week and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.